Welcome to the Durham Original Music and Alumni podcast, a show which takes you around the most exciting original music of any kind on or around the peninsula. My name is George Bone, Alumni Relations Officer, and joining with me today is singer-songwriter, composer, and ethnomusicologist from Cyprus, Taliya Hafiz. Now, Taliya belongs to the world ethnic minority of the Tatar people and conducts ethnomusicological research at Durham University and continues to write instrumental music and songs in different languages ever since. Recently, she was commissioned to write songs for the European Association of Tatar Women, Tatar Hanim. Taliya has also collaborated with an award-winning Billboard charting composer and multi-genre producer, Art Tawanga, in the creation of songs that combine electronic and live instrumentation with poetic, philosophical message. In Taliya's words, quote, "Music is a spiritual practice, a journey of discoveries through reconnection and creation when we delve into the magic that transcends time and space." Very philosophical for this podcast. Taliya, it is lovely to talk to you. How are you on this lovely Sunday?
Oh, I'm really doing very well. Thank you. It's great meeting you, George. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast.
No problem at all. No problem at all. When you keep giving us work to showcase, then we've just got to keep putting you on the podcast, haven't we? So, you are the first non-undergrad that we have interviewed on the pod. Everyone else has been either in first, second, third, or fourth year or in their foundational year. However, you are studying a master's at Durham this year, which is obviously it's been a very, very different perspective. Now, obviously, you've studied at universities other than Durham for the entirety of your life, and obviously haven't been to Durham physically to study because of the pandemic. So, how easy or difficult has it been for you to get involved with the activities at a university that you really haven't been able to physically be at?
I was in Durham 1 year ago when I was just deciding whether to come to study in Durham, and I really like the overall vibe, the nature there, but I haven't studied there being on campus. And of course, online education is entirely different thing and a very new experience. And for me, it was quite tough, just as for anyone, I think, for everyone these days. But in general, I'm enjoying it so far, and I try to see it in positive light. I think our planet has really seen a lot of different disastrous events, like there have been fires in Australia and in Cyprus, where I've been living for a long time. There have been a lot of earthquakes recently, and tsunamis are happening in some countries. So I think if apocalypse is approaching, then probably we are living in such times, because there are all those natural events happening all over the world. So what's going on with this online studies is not that crazy. So I think we can go with it. And I'm just trying to see it positively.
Definitely. And in saying the way that you're trying to live positively, and obviously you had anywhere to go, but you chose to join Durham. In fact, what did you do while you were scouting for universities? What was the sort of primary thing that you were looking for instead of the studies you were looking for?
Well, for me, alongside with songwriting and composition, of course, the fact that Durham University is number one for the studies of music. I remember that day when I discovered that also there has been the research on Tatar music going on in Durham University. And I was just telling, okay, that's the sign that I should join Durham, because it's really very rare that you can see that the researcher studied something Tatar in any university of the world. But then also I really enjoy dancing, and for me, I did a lot of dancing, especially Latin American and ballroom dances, when I studied at Durham American University in Cyprus. So we had that Dancesport community, very vibrant there. And I was always thinking that, okay, that's a very important part of my life, and I want to have a sort of dance sport club in the university that I will join. So based on that aspect and on that criterion, I was thinking about Bristol University, because they have very strong dance sport community there, about Durham University. Also, I think Surrey University, or there are other universities that also have that strong dance sport community. So Durham, I think, has everything. It has strong academic life. I'm really grateful for the support that I get from my supervisors here. They encourage me very much to conduct this research in Tatar music, and they're very knowledgeable. But then, speaking about all these activities, and with DOMAN, that was a great discovery. When I knew that there is such a community, as I told before, I really feel at home when being surrounded by such people who also love producing original music and support each other. So yeah, I think it's amazing community.
You seem to be doing so much work, particularly as a master's student as well. Every master's student that I've talked to beforehand at Durham has been like, I need to cram for my end of year dissertation, or I need to cram for my thesis. But no, with you, it's a case of like, I'm gonna go look for dancing, and I'm also gonna do my Tatar music, and I'm also gonna write music on the side, as well as potentially do my studies. How do you fit it all in, dare I ask? Like, how do you sort of manage this time between your master's education and your commitments? Also, given studying this year in a very different environment than you thought that you would have when you were initially signing up to university, have there been any instances where you might have sort of buckled under these pressures? Because you are doing a lot.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. For me, I think finding the balance between two strands of my life is really important. So if I don't really find time for songwriting and composition, I don't really feel well. So I try to find the balance, because for me it gives me certain energy to work well in my academic commitments, so to write well and to think well with a clear mind. I should do songwriting and composition, and I should also do dancing, because for me it's the release of the negative energy that comes with COVID and with all the being nervous. Everything comes when you're really working hard on your assignments and cramming for exams or presentations. And for me, dancing is just the release of that energy and this positive rhythm and music, and you just forget about everything. With songwriting and composition, it's also like fueling yourself with another sort of energy that is then being transformed in something else when you do your academic work. So if I only do academic assignments, I really don't find enough energy to continue going on. So I need something else. And I think that has been so far in my life, because when I was studying in my undergraduate years, I was doing media and communication and journalism at the university, but simultaneously I was preparing for my ABRCM exams, and I was waiting for those moments when I will come back home and will write songs and plunge into that entirely different world of music making.
I imagine it's the case that obviously you've got a really sort of rich history in your music. So what sort of necessarily sparked it off in that sense? Because you're saying it in very dramatic terms, sort of, if I don't get music, I waste away, I die. What sort of sparked this interest in you to compose, and sort of how early did it sort of hit that this is what you wanted to do?
I remember writing music from the age of 12 years old. So my first song was called Exciting Life. So I wrote it when I was 12 years old, and from then on I started composing music and writing songs. So I remember that came very naturally to me, and that was that moment when you're just improvising, being free, and that brings you that joy because you are free to express whatever you want. I always think how others will perceive my thoughts and my feelings, but here I can allow myself to be free with whatever I want to express. But first of all, in my childhood, actually, I wanted to become first an actress. I remember I was telling to my mom that, okay, I will be an actress, and people around were telling her that's not right. She should choose another profession. That's really very tough. It's not the right profession. I don't know why people were telling so. The reason I chose music was because there is this element of acting in it. So I think deeply within, I really like acting, and I did it during my, like, when I was studying in school and also at the university. So I think songwriting is something which is very linked with acting, because although the songs also come from very sincere feelings, you have this option, you have this chance to live through the particular role that the song gives you. Also, when you sing covers, for example, you should live through the role which was invented, which was created by someone else. And for me, this aspect of acting is something inherent in the practice of songwriting. So I think that was the right thing to do, because I wanted to do the both.
And we're really, really glad that that was the thing that you did, because you're here speaking with us now, and you wouldn't be if you had went into acting. So I'm glad that I know you.
I'm glad I knew you too.
As you said before, you said that DOMAN means a big part to you, and even in your refreshers video, you said, quote, "In my language, which is Tatar and also Russian, Dom means home. So the moment I started working with DOMAN, I just felt at home." At the same time, though, you also work with a lot of non-native languages to you. Just before this conversation, we were talking about how you speak Tatar, you speak French, you speak English, German, Turkish, and Russian as well. So my question to you then is, how much of your music, what is this conversation in yourself? How much of this music do you owe strictly from your cultural influences at home, your dome, and how much of it is influenced by other sort of cosmopolitan European influences?
I like to say that English is the language of my brain, and French is the language of my heart, and then Tatar is the language of my DNA, because these three languages in particular, they define who I am, and also they somehow reflect in my music. So speaking about English language, I think a lot and I write a lot in English. So with my MA and PhD projects, with my university studies, of course, English is the language in which I think a lot of time. And then with French, whenever I have that message about feelings, something romantic on mind, I would feel very natural to express it in French, because I think the very sonority of this language, I think, makes me feel very natural about such messages. So that's why my next album, Sensations, is filled with these romantic messages, and it's entirely in French. So I think I haven't written songs that romantic that those which are in that album, and I felt very natural in doing so in French, because I have that particular like state of mind when I start speaking that language. And I feel like whenever you speak another language, you start to be a little bit another person. So I think language opens another personality in you. And I was reading an article recently which was saying that, it's like when you speak foreign language, 90% of your personality is away, because you can't really say jokes very well, you can't understand any nuances in what other people are saying. But I wasn't really agreeing with that, because I think that another language gives you another personality. Okay, you are aware of that personality which is bestowed to you from the nature, but you are getting another world, and you can express yourself in another way. And my parents were telling me that, hey, when you start speaking French, you're just like another Taliya. And I agree with them, because I just enter...
There's two different versions of you.
Yeah. Or even six.
It's just going to be like an army of 6 different versions of you. Just like coming out of the crop field. Just like all singing your songs, just all in different languages.
Yeah, and I think it's also says a lot about acting, because you have to like take the role of another language as if you're belonging to another culture when you speak. Because for me, especially dealing with pronunciation in French language, which is hard to master, I think when you enter that culture and when you understand that, okay, now I'm the part of this culture because I'm speaking their language, and it's about everything. It's about loving cheese as well as they do, like enjoying the red wine with cheese as they do. It's understanding at least their mentality and this acculturation going on. So I think for me it's super important, and I just feel like I'm French when I speak French or sing French. And with Tatar language, I think it's very important language for me because I'm Tatar and all of my ancestors are Tatar. So for me, that's the language of my history. It's something that connects my present, imbued with English and French languages, with my past, because all of my ancestors, they were speaking Tatar and they are Tatar, like 100%. So for me, also Tatar language is about spirituality, because all of our like family members, they have been very religious, and religion is a very important aspect of our culture. So when I have that serious and spiritual message in mind, I think about Tatar language, and that's the reason why in my song devoted to God, Dieu, it starts with Tatar language, and that's the reason, I think.
I presume from then, if you're talking about your sort of your Tatar as a language as your roots and a sort of ancestry around it, I presume your family are very musically oriented. If you're sort of talking from your roots and then Tatar as an expression of your family through your music, then. So I presume that you've got really strong family connections in your music as well.
I think I really owe very much to my grandparents when speaking about music, because my grandfather, he was playing Tatar accordion, and it is called bayan here, and my grandmother was singing traditional Tatar songs. So they both are very musical, and I think that's where my passion for music making stems from.
You were recently featured in the Women's Composer Project, which is a page on Instagram as a prominent composer to look out for, as well as being involved in DOMAN's own Women in Music workshop, and you asked our panel a lot of questions about experiences in contemporary industry, not only as a musician, but as a female musician, particularly as the session was on International Women's Day. On the other hand, we're recording this on the 14th of March, and in the UK, this comes a day after peaceful protests in Clapham Common happened for the murder of a 33-year-old woman in broad daylight, and they were violently sort of disrupted by the police, even though they were expressing female empowerment. Now, my question to you is, as the second female guest that we've had on the DOMAP, how important is it now more than ever for increased female representation in both the arts and sort of in general that we see them?
I think it's super important because encouraging women to create, if we speak about music, can really change minds of a lot of people, because I think our personality and our nature streams through the music we create. I think we speak about philosophy and esoterics again, but I think it happens on a certain level. So I think if women are given voice, it can create a sort of another atmosphere, and it can really change lives of many people, the way they think, the way they approach each other. And even in politics, I think if women are given rights to govern, there would be less aggression, because psychologically, I think women are prone to being more like softer and being like creating that balance. I think balance is very important everywhere. So everyone should be given equal right. We shouldn't be really too passionate with feminism, because if we are too passionate with feminism, we are in another imbalance. And if we give too much rights only to women and forget about men and about their rights and how they feel comfortable, then we just create another problematic society. And who knows, if we get too passionate about feminism in 20 years, we would be encouraging men and giving rights to men and just dealing with another sort of problem. So I think balance is very important. And I think today what I like about this era is that I think men and women are given equal rights, and everyone has this freedom of expression. And what's happening with all these amazing societies who support women as creators or as politicians, as housewives, I think it's very important.
We took a particular focus at DOMAN this year because we knew that we knew that we didn't want the stereotype to just be sort of like, oh, it's pop. Like we didn't want that like at all at DOMAN, and we also didn't, because we've got a new sort of digital sort of realm that we're entering into, because honestly we were kind of forced to with COVID-19. So like we're sort of expansive on the sort of genres that we cover as well. So we as a society have tried to sort of find that balance between sort of like allowing sort of like everything in, as well as sort of giving a lot of people their voice. So yeah, saying that, we'll go on to your involvement in DOMAN, and specifically more on your new EP that you've got coming out, which is SAD, which is an acronym for sincerity, aspiration, and devotion. I first want to turn it over to the first thing that we heard from you, which was Return Home in our Michaelmas Song Writing Competition. As I said, this is the first we heard from you, and indeed, this was the first time hosting a songwriting competition, so we had no idea on how sort of the logistics would work for it. Considering that you are in a new university, not necessarily meeting any new people in person, were you feeling nervous at all about how the song would be received? We were nervous about how many people we would actually get for it, but we got a really healthy balance of sort of acts and artists in the end. So I'm glad that there was mutual nervousness, but were there any points where you felt the sort of like, I'm sort of really nervous about sharing this, even though I know that sort of music is your passion essentially?
That's a great question. I think of course, I think a lot about how the message will be perceived in any song, but Return Home is a special song because the message, as I was thinking, would not match, because it's such an interesting situation. It's such a challenging situation. If we think about vaccination, for example, people each has their own vision of that, and meanings are so numerous and so different. And with the whole COVID-19 experience, everyone has a different stance on it. So I came up with this positive framing of the COVID-19 experience, but for me, it was very multifaceted. And I came up with this positive message, but of course, for me, that was a very negative experience as well, just for many other people. So I was a little bit worrying how it will be perceived. As you mentioned, I'm not really nervous because I think that people value probably in my songs when I'm being sincere with them, when I'm really telling them what I feel, because that's for what reason art exists. We are interesting when we are ourselves, when we not copy someone else's thoughts and feelings. But actually, fortunately, the song was perceived quite well, and my expectations were surpassed, I think. I'm pleased that the lyrics of the song are quite inspiring to other people. And one of my friends from Cyprus, he wrote me a few weeks ago that he wants to come up with his own arrangement of it. Was really very, very inspiring message from him that the lyrics inspired him to create.
Oh, that's really nice. That's really nice that you've now got sort of two different sort of rearrangements of that song. Obviously, you've got your friends, and you've also got Art to Wangers as well. So it's good to know that something that DOMAN slightly brought on is now this sort of multinational, multifaceted thing. So we're going to give ourselves a pat on the back from that. So moving on to your actual EP now, sort of why sensations? Why are you focusing so much on these feelings of sensations, on sincerity, aspiration, and devotion? Can you tell us a bit more about it and sort of the time scale on how you wrote it?
Yeah, sure. Sensations as the title, which is written in the same way in French and English. So I wanted, because this is an album which is entitled Sensations, it's all in French language, but I wanted the title to be very easily understood by English people and by French. So I came up with this title, but other options were tendresse or caresse. Both words are French, but they are also somehow echoing in English language too. Mm. And I think all the three titles, they express this romantic message and lyricism that this album is imbued with. It took me almost a year, if we speak about the overall working process, but to write the 6 songs that are included in this album, it was just, they were written in 1 month, in August 2020. And the reason I created that deadline for myself, because I knew that when academic year starts, I won't have enough time to really concentrate on writing an album. But I had that desire to write the album, to produce those songs. So August was dedicated to that album, to the writing process. And I was waking up early in the morning, and the whole days were dedicated to that process. And it was imbued with all the feelings from my past, but also from the COVID-19 experience. And people tell me, "Oh, COVID is such an uninspiring period." But I think it all depends on us. Sometimes we can delve into memories. Sometimes we can think about, "Oh, it was so good when I visited friends that year," and we can plunge ourselves into that state, and we can produce something beautiful. Yeah, I think this album will evoke all the beautiful sensations in listeners, and that's why I decided to for the album to have such a title.
It's also got 3 songs in it which are very sort of oxymoronic in the sense of what they mean. Obviously, you've got sad, which is obviously has negative valence to it, but the sort of initialisms of sincerity, aspiration, and devotion that you have in it give a more positive valence to it. So, what ideas did you have going into this album of creating those 3 sensations, like as they were? How did you end up with this sort of dichotomy between sort of happy and sad, and were they written in a sort of teleological progression of S then A then D?
Well, interestingly, sad is just a separate EP, which
Oh,
was
okay.
created this winter. Sensations will have 6 songs. One of them will be Make a Fair, which was already released with DOMAN.
Mm-hmm.
What should I do? And this song shows somehow the style of all the other songs. But some of them are more with much more, I think, energy and passion than Make a Fair, and but they all have that poetry in French language. And then Sad is instrumental EP. I haven't really written a lot of instrumental pieces for a long time, but Sad marks very interesting period in my life. You can imagine, and I think that the listeners of this podcast can imagine this interesting situation when I came from sunny Cyprus with, like, I think now it's 25 degrees Celsius now, and people start swimming in the sea. But here it's minus 33.
There will be no swimming in the sea unless you just want to be like a cartoon-esque sort of like block of ice within it.
Coming here, it was like entirely new setting and new environment, and I was feeling a little bit sad and like adjusting to this new conditions of life. But one day, I remember it was very gloomy and freezing day, and I was outside and I was seeing those black branches, naked branches of the trees, and then the white overcast sky. And then I was watching the black birds flying above, and also the flakes of the snow, the white snow layering the ground. So that there was this black and white palette of colors saturating the environment around for me. And I was thinking that these feelings and these colors would be really very organically expressed through black and white piano melodies, because piano is an instrument that has that same like black and white keys and somehow this aesthetics. So I decided to think about this condition, this feeling of sadness, as something that can be overcome. For me, this was first sincerity, secondly aspiration and devotion. So first of all, being sincere with yourself, admitting that you have that feeling of sadness and that you should overcome somehow this feeling, and being sincere about your thoughts. And then aspiration, because for me it was aspiration towards the attainment of my goals, towards doing what I want to do, and also about music. And then devotion, which speaks about devotion to God and also to musical practice, when you just dissolve in that process and you forget about all those feelings of sadness that you may have in everyday life. And yeah, that's how the album was. I don't know whether there is a sort of teleology there.
Well, I find it ironic that we've been talking about sort of what your language influences mean to you and how important your languages are to you in expressing certain emotions in your pieces, and then you go, no, I'm not going to write an album with any words in it. This is going to be entirely instrumental. So I'm guessing you must have had very strong personal influences behind each of the songs to be able to push those sort of messages across that you couldn't necessarily get across through your own words, because obviously instrumental track.
Yeah, that's amazing question. Actually, yeah, there are no lyrics there, and I can't really express why I decided to make it instrumental.
It's just a bit of a spur of the moment thing, really. It's like I've not done these in a while. Let's go for it.
Well, I think it's because this black and white palette for me, it was all about being laconic. So I thought, okay, it should be laconic. So when the lyrics come already, it is something saturated with a lot of concepts and words. But here it's something when words fail to speak. So when you can't really find the words to express what you're feeling, but music helps you overcome this condition. So I really wanted to make it very simple, but yet with very distinct motifs. And I was thinking a lot about film scoring at that point. So I wanted this EP to sound like film music. That would go really very well with this black and white landscape of Russian winter wonderland.
Well, we have two clips from some of Taliya's work with us today. The first clip is a vocal track called Due, as she mentioned beforehand, and the other is the first track off of SAD, and that is Sincerity.
M'offrant des brassées de larges sourires, quand tant de joie ou de noires pensées, je vis le cœur.
You will find SAD on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere that you can stream music very, very soon. You will find out when those dates are on Taliya's Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, or SoundCloud page, all of which are in the description of this video. As I ask everyone before they go, do you have any sort of tips and tricks that you're willing to give people who want to be in your position making music and making sort of multinational sort of tracks that you would want to hear yourself if you were younger?
I would advise everyone to believe in themselves. You should believe in yourself, and also remember that every person's path is unique. So I think I realized that my mission is music making through a very complicated journey. And now I'm grateful for every puzzle, every bit of it, every element. I think the elements in their entirety made me who I am and are making me who I am. So yeah, just I think aspire to that kind of person who you want to be all the time, and believe in yourselves and that every person's path is unique.
Taliya Hafiz, thank you so much for joining us today. See you later.
Thank you.